Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dal. I spent quite a bit of time figuring out which classes are going to be the best and the strongest during my time of patch 11.1 PTR. But now that season 2 content has come out, some of those predictions proved true and some of them proved wrong. And one of the classes that I was definitely wrong about, one of the specs that many were wrong about, was the Windwalker Monk. I don't think anybody expected this class to become this good and start to surge and start rising in popularity out of nowhere, to the point where you're stacking multiple of this class just to stack up your melee roster for mythic raid progression for the world first race, with Windwalkers doing some ludicrous numbers. We did see that they got a bunch of buffs towards the tail end of PTR, but by then we couldn't really go and test them out in raids and dungeons effectively. We just knew that they were probably going to be good on paper, but when's the last time Windwalker Monk was really good and meta? And this season may actually be their season. This class is doing some ludicrous damage. It is wild how good it is right now, and if you've ever wanted to main a Windwalker Monk, this might be one of the best seasons in a very long while. And I don't even remember last time Windwalkers was top tier outside of maybe PvP content specifically. So I really wanted to highlight the spec and take a look at exactly what makes him good right now and things you'll need in order to get one up and running if you're looking to play one in season 2. As always, if you guys want to see more regular updates for the patch 11.1 season 2 content, be sure to follow the channel and subscribe. But otherwise, let's dive right in. Initially, during Season 1 of War Within, I promised myself that I would do a much better job at highlighting classes heading into Season 2, because in Season 1 we saw fairly big meta shifts all throughout that season, and I really wanted to give you guys some of the highlights of which classes are all of a sudden starting to surge and become better, and I told myself that I really want to be better and more on point with it within Season 2, especially with how things are volatile during the first few weeks anyway, as they're going to be doing even more class tuning most likely over these next few weeks. But I don't think anyone expected, after PTR testing in all of 11.1, for Windwalker Monks to be doing as well as they are right now, and this class is actually pretty nuts, and that by itself is fairly surprising. They were always decent on PTR, and players have given them a go, as they got some of the more fun tools within the talent tree, but nobody really marked them as like an insane option heading into this new season or for the raid content, and they just started to surge forward out of nowhere as players really realized that, wait, some of these last minute buffs that they saw on PTR were actually kind of crucial, and this potentially places them in a really good spot this season. While Windwalker Monk isn't always a meta pick for every single patch and every single update, as they usually are the black sheep of the Monk class, besides in PvP content, but this season could be potentially their time to shine within PvE, dungeons and raids specifically. And these last minute buffs were actually surprisingly crucial. Some of the changes they did last minute is adjusted Zuen's bond, so instead of doing this whole cooldown reduction based off of images whenever they are active and combat abilities, they just flatline give Zuen a 30-second cooldown reduction plus 30% more damage. Much better as a passive option, not as technically skillful. There's a little bit less skill expression there, but it makes it so much less annoying to play with. This puts Windwalker from a 2-minute class with this talent down to like a 1.5/3-minute class, because now they have very strong cooldowns every 3 minutes, which is where a lot of the fights are designed around. But you also have that wiggle room of that 1 minute 0.5, where you can now shift those cooldowns into the 2-minute window if there's some maybe huge benefit out of it. But better yet, use more of those cooldowns during more of these encounters, especially with some of the boss fights that we saw during the first few bosses before, like the One-Arm Bandit, Muggsy, and the last boss with the Gallowix. All of those bosses actually have quite a decent spot for 1.5-minute burst cooldowns, and Windwalker Monks in particular with that Zuen combo actually fits so nicely into it. The last minute buffs to the last Emperor's Capacitor, juicing it by like 100% from a 200% more damage per stack down to, or up to 400% per stack, was enough to make this talent super good, especially in cleave content. And a slight little adjustment for Power of the Thunder King makes the ability fairly strong in single target, but also really good when cleaving handful of enemies, which there are some situations within raids and dungeons where this talent gets a lot of play. Conversely, players could also play Communion with the Wind going down to Slicing Winds, and many players are recommending that you don't shirk this talent completely, as numerically it should be performing much better. They've also fixed it a bunch, and while it is a wacky talent that does make you rethink how you end up using your instead of flying serpent kick. Now you use it as a combat ability. While it does take a little bit of time adjusting to it, monks that are able to play this correctly should be seeing some really good numbers out of it, and its cooldown being synced down to 30 seconds is really not that bad when it comes to the overall structure of the spec. Plus, I've also some last minute changes towards Condo Celestials, with it being a 1.5 minute cooldown. Inline lines up super well with your Zuen. Another change they made is to the usefulness of Heart of the Jade Serpent, which gives you massive cooldown reduction on things like Strike of the Windlord, Fists of Fury, Rising Sun Kick, Flying Serpent Kick, and Whirling Dragon Punch. But they also adjusted it so instead of you building up some resource and then your Strike of the Windlord would sometimes activate Heart of the Jade Serpent, now it just activates it every single time. It does have a slightly shorter duration, but it's a lot more playable and a lot more usable, which gives Windwalkers, and this does not mean that Shadowpan fell behind too far. You can technically still play Shadowpan. It isn't a bad hero spec, even though it's passive. Conjure the Celestials is just now a more viable active option, which gives monks more choices of how they want to play around with their cooldowns. Or with them being super high on burst and AoE damage, Celestial Conduit just easily integrates itself into the overall playstyle structure, as well as all these little benefits that you can get from all of your various celestial bonuses. Overall, this creates a class with a ton of AoE damage, great priority damage as well, which is something a lot of players are looking forward to. Whether it is raids or Mythic Plus encounters, priority damage is massive because every class can pad, but classes that can do priority damage to take out the most scariest foes or take down a boss quicker while getting some free damage to all mobs around you, it is massive. But Windwalkers don't only have great AoE damage, but also raw single target damage that, at least right now, based on some of the sims that I've seen, competes with all the other classes out there. I mean, we're not done gearing for the season, so things are going to change, and there's likely going to be even more class tuning by the time we start getting Mythic Track gear head to toe. But at least right now in the current logs, monks are at least there and they're competitive with some of the top tier options. Classes that we thought were going to be insane for raiding, Windwalkers are right there with them, and they just have a little bit more growing room as you add more enemies into the encounter, making them almost like a perfect melee, at least for the moment. Now, if you're somebody who always wanted to pick up Windwalker and are looking to potentially give this thing a go in Season 2, while I'm not somebody who knows this class in depth like I do Rogue, I still did want to give you guys some of the builds to help you jump into the class more easily, and this will be your current raiding build. With a class challenge tree that mostly focuses on amping yourself up with as many defenses as possible and granting you quite a bit of mobility while allowing you to take all the utility skills like Interrupt, for example. While the spec challenge tree is mostly standard, really putting some points into the Whirling Dragon Punch playstyle, but also amping up more procs of Zuen, but it doesn't pick up too many capstones, mostly focused on pure single target damage. The Mythic Plus build is actually not that different. It retains the majority of that same structure, picking up only a handful of new talents like Shadowbox and Tread, so Blackout Kicks can cleave multiple targets. Then I've seen a lot of monks recently go into Last Emperor's Capacitor and Power of the Thunder King. There's apparently some builds that are recommending you to try Size and Winds. It is something to get used to, but numerically can be significant. But that means that you will have 2 talent points to spend here. So 2 talent points that you can reinvest, one into Slicing, and the next one you can go into Fury of Zuen, or potentially maybe dual threat as an option. There's a couple of variations, but if you do need some of the more up-to-date builds, we definitely have at least a couple of resources on our Discord, at least where to find builds what players are running in within raids and Mythic Plus dungeons. But I think it would be also a good idea if you know of a trusty guide writer for monk content. I definitely would check out some of the builds that they may recommend, or hit up the monk Discord, which is one of the better places to get a lot of the theory crafting and a variety of builds and even recommendations and help with your class. And if you haven't played Monk in a while, there have actually been a number of improvements with this spec. While I don't, again, want to make this video sound like a proper guide, they did make it a little bit easier heading into Season 2. Previously, monks used to have a debuff that you had to put up on enemy targets, where every time you Blackout Kick or hit them with a Tiger Palm, I used to call it Jab all the time, or Rising Sun Kick, you will put up the Spinning Crane Kick debuff on him. The more enemies with that debuff, the more damage Spinning Crane Kick did. That got ripped out of its core, and Spinning Crane Kick not just does a lot of damage on its own, which means there's less micromanagement you have to do as a Windwalker. You don't have to jab an enemy or Tiger Palm them, tab to a new target, Tiger Palm, tab, and just make sure you tab and mark all the enemies. You can just go in and start spinning as soon as possible. This makes the playstyle so much smoother, rotation feels so much better, and this allows you to get into AoE damage immediately without having to do any kind of weird ramp. Oh, the Capstones of Capacitor has a pretty nice payoff. While it has a bit of a delayed play because you gotta spend chi in order to stack up its damage, when you do get the damage output, it feels pretty good. However, if you do want to play Size and Winds, this one I played a lot with on the PTR. I mean, it just does a ton of damage as long as you can kind of get used to the whole empowerment mechanic effect with it. But once you can get used to it and position yourself accordingly, the amount of burst damage you can do in Mythic Plus dungeons can be actually quite significant. If you have played Windwalker before but haven't played it in a while and are looking to potentially come back to it, I would recommend running Zuen's Bond as soon as possible. The adjustment for your major cooldown from a 2 minute to 1.5 minute, it makes the spec feel super fast paced. It is a very small adjustment, but after somebody who played Windwalker in previous expansions with it being a 2 minute cooldown, I always felt like I had to really find a good moment to use Zuen as best as possible. Kind of like when I play Assassination Rogue, I try to really maximize my death mark window, but with your cooldowns being 1.5, it feels like you can toss them out a lot more often, and it just allows you to use them more aggressively, and it feels really, really good. The fact that everything lines up on a 1.5 minute CD, I feel like just allows you to use it more naturally inside of more trash packs, and it's super, super fun. Great quality of life improvement. And if you are somebody who is going to be trying to gear out a monk, which I really wish I started gearing this thing really early on, so I'm just kind of behind on trying to get this thing up and running, one of the things you will want to get immediately is your tier set as soon as possible. The tier set bonus with the 2 set reads, your special abilities have a chance to activate Winning Streak. This is the tier set for all melee classes. As you do damage, you gain stacks of Winning Streak. Winning Streak can stack and buff the damage of your Rising Sun Kick, Spinning Crane Kick up to 10 times by 3% per stack. Rising Sun Kick and Spinning Crane Kick all have a 15% chance to remove the Winning Streak buff. Fists of Fury with a 4 set applies 1 stack of Winning Streak guaranteed when cast and when it finishes its channel. And the damage of your next Fist of Fury is increased by 8% per stack when Winning Streak is removed. So every time you kick, you have a chance to remove the stacks, buffing up the damage of your next big Fist of Fury. Your Winning Streak always is removed once it reaches maximum stacks, which allows you to regularly get the proc rate for your 4 set to amp up the damage of the Fist of Fury. This tier set by itself, I remember talking to a couple of friends during PTR, it seems like a decent option, but it was just one of those tier sets that's like, okay, maybe it'll be good, looks decent on paper, but it turns out to be a huge part of the powerhouse that is Windwalker Monk, and what really allows them to output as much damage as they do right now. So getting your tier set, 4 set in particular, as soon as possible on Windwalker is definitely where you're going to see a lot of damage output with the spec specifically. To give you another gearing tip, since the cooldowns of Windwalker are shifting, and it looks like for the time being they are probably going to be running a 1.5 minute Zuen, House of Cards ends up being a really good trinket. There's not too many trinkets that use a 1.5 minute CD window, and this is one of the best ones for it. So if you are going to be playing this class, you will want to do a little bit of raiding. The one arm bandit is the boss you're going to want to focus on, but if you can get this trinket, it will synergize super well with your playstyle. Whether you get it on champion track or hero track, or better yet, mythic track, whatever version of it you get, it's kind of almost mandatory to make this thing work. I know there's a lot of players out there that just want to play a class that is the best, that is the strongest, that has the biggest DME numbers out there. But I did want to also highlight some of the other things I really enjoyed about Windwalker, because it really has gone through a lot of quality of life adjustments, especially heading into War Within and Season 2 content with its talent tree shakeup. Some of the more fun talents that I really do enjoy is Light of the Air. Being able to dash around really exemplifies the mobility that this spec has in particular, and I feel like it's one of those little things that not a lot of players mention. And Ring of Peace still maintains to be an exceptionally strong talent within right situations. Mythic Plus Dungeons in particular, it is amazing. Whether you're looking to keep enemies at bay or force them from running away from you, or just trying to spread enemies apart to stop certain casts, it is really, really strong. And the amount of uses this ability has, I feel like really does make it so that when you play Monk, it does feel like you're really in control of a lot of the encounters. You have great defenses with Fortifying Broom, you have fantastic defenses with Diffuse Magic that can be used to dispel yourself or to shield yourself from damage taken. And by all means, Windwalker's definitely got one of the best mogs for the season. This whole thing, this Yulon looking set looks incredible, and the variations you can get of the set from the PvE or PvP side of things is also fairly incredible. So if you always want to check out Windwalker or explore Monk in general for PvE content, this season may be the best chance for you to do so. But however, I did hear some whispers and rumblings that potentially there may be some patch tuning in the future, and Monks may be getting cut down to size a little bit. We don't really know if this is something that's going to happen now or maybe at the end of the world first race or some sort of a talent tuning adjustments in the future, but last time I heard any talks of nerfs, it happened to Beastmaster Hunters and it kind of kneecapped them, so everybody who was having fun with it no longer could have as much fun and and do as much damage as that spec was doing. So if something like this is were to happen with Monk, you might as well have some fun with it right now before they end up hitting it in any way possible. At least that would be my recommendation. Hopefully if they do any kind of tuning adjustments, they don't completely obliterate Windwalker's potential for endgame content, because I feel like when is the last time we've seen Windwalker be like really a meta pick for things like Mythic Plus or raiding, and being there for more than just, oh, you bring a buff to the team, welcome aboard into the raiding roster type of a situation, but rather, wait, we actually want to stack up Windwalker monks like they're doing as of right now. But with that though, as always, I do want to thank all of you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys did enjoy this update. If you did enjoy it or found it informative, go ahead and give this video a like. I would very much appreciate it. I'm probably going to do a video talking about some of the other stronger classes for this season as of right now, because I've been running into a lot of variety of classes within dungeon groups and raids, and some of these specs are straight up out of control. So I'll probably do a little bit more coverage over these next few weeks. Also, let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below, and as always, I'll see all of you guys in the next one.